Good evening, Internet, and welcome to the Piper Review. This is my secondary channel. My primary channel is the Piper Report, where I discuss things from politics to news to breaking news and things of that nature. So I decided to do a secondary channel where I discuss and do reviews of books, TV shows, movies, etc., etc. The reason is because although I could probably do it on my primary channel, I kind of want to differentiate between the two. I don't want to have like subs watching my politics videos, but then not watching my movie reviews and stuff like that. So I think this would be organized, although I do hope that you do come over to the Piper Report. I think you'd like that as well. But the film I'm going to review here, this is my first review, is The Shawshank Redemption, based on the Stephen King novel. Now, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. This movie, in my mind, is a true masterpiece, especially the musical score by Thomas Newman. It succinctly fits it perfectly. You can actually feel the emotion, but let's go over it here. So first, the plot. The plot is a man named Andy, played by Tim Robbins, who is sentenced to life at Shawshank Prison for 2 counts of murder, where he meets another inmate named Red. And the two bond over a span of 19 years, both finding their own redemption, but in very different ways. The two main themes of the movie are hope and despair. And we'll start with hope here. Andy is a new prisoner, and Andy encompasses hope. And before Andy came to the prison, the inmates were primarily encompassed with despair. They lived their life day by day. They really didn't have any type of future optimism. They got along to get along. That was that simple. And this is actually brilliantly portrayed by one of the very first scenes in the movie, when Red has a parole hearing. He is neglected from being paroled in the hearing, and when he comes out, an inmate asks him how did it go, and he said, to the effect, same old shit, different day. And I think this really delineates the persona of the inmates there, that they know, in this case Red knows, that he was never going to get paroled here, that he was never going to be able to leave the prison for what he has done. They live by acceptance. They accept their situation, but they accept it morosely. They accept it with a feeling of melancholy. But their acceptance doesn't lead to any type of positive mentality. They accept it, but they accept it morosely, like I said before. And Andy, though, is different. When Andy comes here, he brings hope with him. He brings the possibility of freedom, even if it's freedom while trapped in a cage. And a good example of this is when Andy breaks into the library, or he's in the library and he locks the guard out. And he's got a new shipment from the state regarding the library, and with it came books, and with it came a record and records. So what Andy did, he picked an opera song and he played it over the loudspeaker while all of the inmates were on the yard. And Red even said that they didn't know what they were what the singing meant. They couldn't understand the words, but all of them felt free that day. All of them felt like they were a bird and that the walls didn't exist. They felt human, essentially. And that was just one example. Andy also gave them a reason to live, because one of Red's most tragic attributes is he feels that if he's not now, he will be in the future institutionalized, which is the product of Shawshank, and Brooks Hadlin is the product of Shawshank. I will go over that shortly here, but so Andy encompasses hope. Now, the other theme is despair. And before Andy arrived, like I was saying earlier, the Shawshank prison inmates were depleted of hope. They lived through acceptance of their situations, with their various denial of parole opportunities. And like I said before, Red's first parole was a prime example of this. It's also interesting to note that guards like Hadley and the warden break these prisoners down. They break them down so much that these prisoners, they don't want to look for a happy future. They want to live in the moment, but at the worst possible conditions. Andy changes this. So they don't become as scared as the guards anymore. Another reason how Andy changed this is when they were tarring the roof. And Andy was able to, by offering his services to Hadley, the main guard, get each prisoner or each inmate that was working on the roof beers. And they also felt human from that. So Andy brought a sense of humanism back to an otherwise neglected world, an otherwise dark world that is Shawshank. The characters now. The characters are essential. In my opinion, the movie focuses on 3 fundamental characters, and they all kind of give examples of the themes. There's Brooks Hadlin, Andy, and Red. Now, we'll start with Brooks Hadlin. Brooks Hadlin has been there for 50 years, and he was there for murder, and he is the product of being institutionalized. He is the product of Shawshank. His parole scene is one of the strongest scenes in cinema history. You can understand his pain. You can understand his apprehensiveness. His apprehension is evident to everyone. And then the musical score by Thomas Newman during that scene is absolutely perfect. He was institutionalized. And what is that? Institutionalized means that you don't know how to compensate on the outside. You have to feel like you are trapped. You have to be told what to do. You live in a cage, told when to eat, told when you can go on the yard. Or as Red said later on in the movie, told when you can take a piss. And this becomes so warped in their minds, the inmates that have been there for long durations, that when they're free of that, they don't know how to handle themselves. They get depressed. And in Brooks Hatlen case, he wanted to go back. But he said he was too old to go back. And he was. He was an old man by now. So instead of trying to get out from this deep burden upon him, he kills himself. He hanged himself. And that is the ultimate tragedy of institutionalized. And that was Red fears. And that's what Red fears automatically. Because Red's been there so long that he knows this could happen to him. And it probably will happen to him. But Andy changes that. Or Andy helps change that. Now, Andy, he's also a tortured soul. Because he blames himself for the death of his wife. Although he didn't personally kill her or her lover, he pushed her away. He pushed her away by ignoring her. So in the end, it was his fault that she was with another man at that certain situation, at that certain place where she was murdered. So when he first comes to Shawshank, he's really calm. He's really serene. He doesn't look like he's nervous. He doesn't look like he's angry. Even when he's attacked by other inmates and being raped, he lives it because he accepts it. He feels he deserves it. Although after a while, this changes. After a while, he becomes so broken down by Hadley and the warden that he realizes that he has suffered enough, that the sins that he has done or the pain, the guilt he feels is finally erased. He is finally exonerated from any wrongdoing, and he finds his redemption. He finds his redemption by escaping from Shawshank Prison. He finds his redemption from escaping from his cell and also robbing the warden. The warden was a criminal. The warden was an antagonist of the film. He robbed the warden, and eventually the warden killed himself because of it. But Annie's biggest redemption, the biggest redemption of all, is helping Red, saving Red from being institutionalized, saving Red from being pessimistic about everything in his life, that if Red ever gets out, he would kill himself. And Annie was successful in this. Annie's biggest redemption is helping the prisoners cope with their situation and freeing the ever burden upon Red. And eventually, Red joins him in the end. Red does get paroled, and although he felt institutionalized, he thought of joining Andy. And eventually, they meet up again. Both free men. And it's a really powerful movie. Now, Red, he's also a tragic figure. But we kind of went over that a little bit. I want to talk about Red's redemption. Red's redemption is not being institutionalized. Not falling under the guise or falling under the illusion of what happens to all inmates that are there forever. His biggest redemption was being able to start a life again, even though he was older now, even though he was no longer a young kid. He realized what he did was wrong, and he realized he doesn't even want to be there anymore. He knows if he gets out, he can finally succeed. He can finally go off and do stuff that he probably couldn't do before Annie arrived. So Red's biggest redemption is being able to have an outside life, a life outside of Shawshank Prison. And with that, that is essentially the whole film. Not the whole film, I mean, I didn't tell you the whole plot, but it's a very powerful movie. A very powerful movie and great musical score. It's one of my favorite movies. It's one of those movies that you won't watch it for like 5 months, and then you'll end up watching it like 5 times in a week. It's that good, and it's that powerful, you have to watch it again. So, with that, that is my first review of The Shawshank Redemption. And I'm done.